Welcome to another episode of the Alberta Craft Beer podcast. My name is Andrew, and I'm one of the people behind the Alberta Craft Beer Guide. And our goal is simple. We just want to grow the craft beer community. We do this by educating the interested and entertaining the entrenched. Our guest today is Kirk from Blindman. Not only is he an owner of Blindman Brewing, he contributes a lot to beer culture. He writes our Words article, which I believe is the longest running feature article in our guidebook. And yeah, he's deeply involved in the beer scene. So welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot, Andrew. How's it going, man?
Very good. Very good. So our show is going to be a little bit different today because we're going to talk about some comparisons, how the world was in 2020 versus how it's going to be in 2021, what people are doing and what Blindman is doing, of course, and the industry is doing to navigate the world and move forward. We'll talk about how the future does look bright, because I think there's a lot to look forward to. And then we'll talk about some comparisons of maybe what we missed out on, but also what we're looking forward to. So
sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I think the first big one, that one of your suggestions, is basically, how businesses move forward now versus what they would have done a year ago, pre world changing and everything like that.
Yeah, so I think I told you this story, but in February of last year, there'd be people reach out to me and say, hey, I want to open up a brewery. What do you think we should do? And obviously we're trying to grow the community like you are. And so we want more breweries. We want people to be successful. And so, I tend to give people definitely a lot of time and thought into that. And February last year, I was telling people, gotta get the taproom experience right. It's all about getting people through your doors, sitting in your seats. Just try to pack them in as much as you can. Just get as many people. Small space, doesn't matter. Just pack them right in. Yep. And about a month later, that turned out to be terrible advice. So my bad for anybody who took my advice back in February. I still think the advice is probably still relevant today, but obviously it's quite different, and things have happened, and things won't ever be the same.
Yes. Yeah. And I still think that's such a huge part. Like, we're not going to be in the world we're in forever. We'll bounce back through various things. We don't have to get into everything. But I think that's still undervalued in the taproom world. It's just that taproom experience. You don't need the fanciest taproom or even, like you said, the biggest taproom. But if people go in and they can feel special, they can feel safe, they can feel comfortable, excitement, happy, whatever it may be. If there's just a connection with the people, that brand experience is, I have a great time in the Blindman tap room. So anytime I see your brand on tap in a bar or in a liquor store, that carries over, right? I think it's so important to have that. And we'll get back to that again. I'm sure we will. Dare I ask, are you joining me on a beer today, or are you not joining me on a beer today?
right now I've got a coffee, but maybe later I'll grab one. And some of the metrics that have driven this kind of this taproom explosion that obviously is on hold but not dead is this idea of neighborhood bars. Neighborhood bars have been dying for generations. My feeling about that is that the cell phone has kind of killed it. Nowadays, people, this has obviously been happening for 20 years now, or people meet up with people. They don't just go to their local. But we still crave a little bit of this community and, this aspect of just togetherness. Obviously, we're really craving it now. And that's kind of what third spaces like tap rooms really offer. Somewhere, just a gathering spot. Like you said, the atmosphere is great, but it doesn't have to be the biggest, doesn't have to be the fanciest. It just has to be a place where people want to gather. And hopefully we can gather again soon enough and experience that all again.
Yeah, it's something so special. Actually, the last day that you were allowed to do like pints on premise before the lockdown, I don't remember what day that was. Was it December or November?
I can't even remember anymore. It feels like a century ago.
Actually, yeah, it was like mid-December. It was like the 13th or the 15th, because then it was like 4 weeks, and now they extended. Anyway, and I was at Beer Revolution. I was by myself, but I was sitting at the bar because I had it partitioned and spaced out and all that. And way across the bar, right on the horseshoe bar, there was another guy and then, you know, a space, and then another guy. And so it was like 3 single guys, right? We didn't know each other. And of course, you talk to the bartender about beer. That's an experience in and of itself, where you could just like talk about the beer you have. And then we started chatting about travel. I think there was some show on TV, and we were talking about traveling to Ireland and traveling to all these places. And I never met these guys. I might not never see them again. But it was so refreshing just to have a conversation with people the same way those are the pub conversations, right? Like, you can't emulate that. You're not going to, for the most part, talk to someone random on the internet over like a video chat and just have these spontaneous conversations, right?
Yeah, and social science backs that up. So there's this idea of how friendships are formed. Friendships are not formed by planned, experiences that are structured. Friendships are actually formed or most easily formed during random encounters that you weren't prepared for, you weren't expecting. It's the idea of, okay, why was I friends with people, that I met in college? It's that, I met them here, and then they were out there, and then, we got talking about this, and it just, that's honestly how humans are designed, is to make those kind of connections in a unstructured way. Yeah. And so you're absolutely right. It just is harder to do that without communal gathering spaces like, great beer bars like Beer Rep.
Now, do you think, speaking about the neighborhood pubs, obviously they have been on a decline for quite some time. I was saying maybe even a couple of years ago that imagine if even, 10% of those kind of the quasi neighborhood pubs that just serve all the same macro BS, even if just 10% of those switch to a local brewery, where maybe beer was only brewed on site, where it's just serving those communities. Do you think that would help reinvigorate communities and help bring people together, or is that too big of an ask? Is that too small? Do you think it's just the tip of the iceberg?
It's hard to say. Obviously, I'm not a soothsayer or anything like that. It sounds like a fantastic idea. I'd love that. In a dynamic culture where people are getting their information from a lot of different spaces, I still think that people will be traveling to the spots that they really like. So I don't know if, the local pub near my house, if they start serving craft beer, if that'd be the spot I'd go to, or if I'm going to go to the places that are really, speak to me and really, attract the kind of people that I love to talk to, or, the people have been doing it for decades now that have just been killing it, that have been pioneers in serving craft in our communities. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
You should try it.
Interesting. It's very interesting. You talk about, first big question about moving forward. Obviously your advice will come back again full circle as far as, cramming people in tap rooms. Do you think in the recent light of, not that racism is being, it's always been there, now it's just being videotaped, right? And we have, Black Lives Matter movements and some breweries involved with those things. Do you think that breweries and brands are becoming more conscious and more aware of what's going on in the world and starting to bring that more local when it comes to marketing and really moving forward, essentially? Or do you think people can just keep doing what they've been doing as far as, their brand and not worry about world issues?
No, obviously, craft beer has always been seen at being at the forefront of things, at pushing things forward, at, bringing things, doing what they can. And that's, I think, all that anybody, is looking for craft brewers is to do what they can. Whether that's, social justice initiatives, racial equity, the environment, just do what you can. Yeah, you're right. Like, you can't just keep doing what you're doing and expect the world to change for the better. People have to make actions.
Yeah, they can make some changes, even on some, some smaller things, but it can make a big impact for people. Talk about getting creative. I think, there's a few brands, in you guys, Blindman being a more production focused brewery. And I'll ask you this, and then I'll, give some examples of how I know some people have adjusted with the hockey season that was gearing up, like World Juniors and the NHL. It was like end of December. It looked like bars and restaurants were only going to be closed for the 4 weeks and then maybe come back open again. I know a few places ramped up their draft and keg production, And then obviously that's being, decimated, doesn't even do it justice. All but eliminated, right?
Disappeared.
Yeah. Did you guys get caught holding a bunch of kegs, and then have you found a way to flip it, or were you more, did you have a better plan in place, or what did Blindman?
Yeah, you can't really plan for things that are changing on a daily basis. Yeah, we got stuck with a whole bunch of kegs, but that was a little bit on purpose. We really want to support bars and restaurants however we can, however legally allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those ways is to make sure that they are absolutely not stuck with product.
Yeah.
So we've told them repeatedly, if you go down, you're shut down, sell the kegs back to us. Even if they go stale on our end and we have to, turn them into vinegar or, feed them to cows and stuff like that. We got some ideas on the go. We'll eat that. You're not eating that. We still have the ability to generate revenue through, selling to liquor stores and selling, a little bit out our tap room. So, we'll survive. Yeah, we just want to support those guys because obviously I love all of them and they're just awesome people. And, it's trying times.
Absolutely. I know there was like Sea Change ramped up with a bunch of their beers, and then they've been doing a $1 growler fill. Basically, I see it as like, hey, if they're going to be stuck with kegs that will eventually go bad, it's better to sell them quickly than not do anything with them at all. And they were taking, they were $1 for a growler fill. First for the blonde, they ran out in like 6 days. Then they did the lager for 6 or 7 days. But 100% of any tips with that went to the Edmonton Food Bank. So they donated, I think the first wave was like $5,000, and I think they were hoping to double it to get to like $10,000, which is great. So you take a situation that's like, yeah, our people, our keg customers have to sell back a keg or whatever. At least we can put it in the mouths of people who will appreciate it, and then you can at least create some good as a result, right? And then when people go in to get a beer, then they're probably going to buy, maybe some food or get a 4-pack or do something. But again, it goes back into that brand experience that you're having a good time. You go, oh, sweet deal. I feel good. I'm giving to the food bank. A kind of a win-win-win for the most part.
Yeah, totally.
That's neat. Very neat. Resilience. What have you learned in the last year, or I guess since March, you and your operating partners, as far as resilience?
Yeah, just to keep going. Like, there was a time that we were wondering if liquor stores would have closed, and then obviously this would be a quite different conversation. But fortunately, there's a lot of taxes on alcohol in our world, so governments are a little bit leery of shutting down that cash flow. They make a lot more money if people are buying beer versus buying anything else. So I think that weighs on people. So yeah, as long as we have the ability to, sell to liquor stores and to do our home delivery and to do a little bit of off sales, we're doing just fine. We never laid anybody off. We started up home delivery and moved a bunch of people into that, and we're paying them their full wages. Not call it delivery driver wages. We're paying them good full wages, and we're just keeping on, and that's all we can do. But again, we're in such a fortunate position that we still have the ability to, to generate sales and keep going. So, yeah, we can't be too sad about things, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that was a big move, that it was pretty quick that people were allowed to switch to direct to consumer delivery. I know for a fact that Outcast, Patrick and Kristen, their entire, like the advice you were giving earlier, their entire business model was, 99% of revenue comes out of the tap room through pints. So I believe they were the first. I think the day it was announced that you could do direct delivery, within 24 hours, they had a website up, and they just shifted. They're like, well, we need to do something. And they're, canning crowlers and getting their hands on whatever they could, to put their beer in packaging and get it to their customers. Cause they knew it's pack up the doors or, or like die or find a way kind of thing. And
yeah, it was always allowed. You were always allowed to do it. There was never any change in policy. If you have a Class D, you were always allowed to do it. Just nobody did because it was a pain in the butt. We had thought about it. We were like, that seems like a pain in the butt, but you were always allowed to do it. But obviously, as soon as things shut down, now you're kind of forced to do it. Yeah. In a real hurry.
And they must have expedited because it was I guess Class D, that includes deliveries. If you apply for a delivery license, as a Class D license then.
Well, a delivery license has to purchase from a Class D is the rule. Oh, so okay. Skip the Dishes has to apply has to buy all their liquor from a Class D liquor store. The one change that did happen is that Class A's, so bars and restaurants, they were now allowed to sell to either to do delivery or to sell to delivery services as if they had a Class D. That was the change, is to allow restaurants and bars to sell.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense now. I mean, and it's not all bad. I mean, the fact that you could go to a bar or a restaurant and get, cocktails to go, like.
Yeah, I just bought a bottle of wine from a bakery the other day, simply because, they had a curated list and, they said it'd be great. So, hey, why not?
Yeah, there you go. Get some bread, get some wine. I mean, they go great together. That's fantastic. All right, let's look at, this is, I think, a big section because there's a lot of things I've been scheming on. I think it's really easy to get caught in the loop of following news, getting notifications, being the world is a doomsday, everything's going wrong, everything's going bad. But when you get perspective and you get appreciative of the things we do have, and then you look to the future about what we can create, what is going on, what's exciting, trend-wise for alcohol, but also for our industry. Why does the future look bright for Kirk and for Blindman?
Actually, because it has to. If, like I said, if you look at the world through doom-colored glasses, well, life would suck. So we have to believe that things will be better and things will be great. And I do believe that. Obviously, this pandemic is a pandemic, and we have to get through it. And we're starting to turn the corner, hopefully, in it. And restaurants and bars should open up here in a couple of weeks, even for limited, and things will hopefully die back down during the summer, and we can have a bit of a summer, and then by fall people are vaccinated, and 10 years from now we'll look back and say, what the hell. And craft beer is going nowhere. The bars and restaurants that are they're holding on. They've got ideas, they've got plans for big things, and I'm just super excited to see what the world looks like turning the corner on this.
Absolutely. I know. I just love that, this is forced businesses, for the most part in a good way, to step their game up as far as like e-commerce. So many businesses really didn't have websites or places to purchase before. And, with the advance of, Square and all these different websites, it's been a little easier. But I love that it's forced businesses to run their business better, I think, especially if you're running at leaner margins and skeleton crews or whatever it may be in certain situations, that you got to look at what's important on how you're spending your money.
Yeah, totally. E-commerce is always honestly under indexed in Canada compared to the US and the UK, like outrageously so. I remember talking to the guys at the Liquor Lodge in Jasper. And they've been doing delivery and online for years now, and just been going gangbusters for them. And before the pandemic, they were talking to the Alberta Liquor Store Association and saying, "Hey, jump on this, folks! Like this is what people want. You have to give them what they want." And you're absolutely right. Then when things are forced and you're forced to respond to customers, well, then it really forces you to step up your game.
Yeah. Also, stuff like this, virtual meetings. I used to always do my podcasts in person. That's the way I liked it. And basically, if I couldn't do a meeting in person with someone, I wouldn't. And that was a detriment to me and my podcast because I'm based in Edmonton. So most of my podcasts were people based in and around Edmonton. And so it did a disservice to a all of our friends in, the rest of central Alberta, but in Calgary and south and north and all that. So I like that, this is normalized virtual meetings. If people didn't know how to use Zoom before, they know how to use it now, or they do Messenger or whatever it is. So it's opened up podcast for me, but also down the road, if you have a sales meeting and say there's an incident where you can't travel now, it's more normalized for you to take a video meeting with someone. You still have some face-to-face is not the same as obviously in person shaking someone's hand. But it's better than just a phone call, I think.
Yeah, it's just changed things, and I'm like you. My productivity is through the roof with virtual meetings, so I don't have to spend as much time on the road. So yeah, just normalizing that just helps out, man.
Yeah, 100%. Beer in public, aka I could have this beer poured up. I'm sitting in a park, cop walks by. Hey, how's it going? Oh, good. How are you? That's good. Continues on with his way. Do you think we're on that path? Do you think we'll see that very, very shortly in Alberta where you can drink? It'll be normalized. Obviously, if you're drunk in public, there's consequences. But if you're having a beer or two in a park or on a picnic, do you think that'll be decriminalized?
My joke, I've been saying this joke for years, you might even heard it, is that if you took our liquor laws, our open container laws, and you transported them to France, the French would be like, oh, we've been through this before. Government's starting to overstep. Time to sharpen those guillotines again. There'd be riots. There'd be no way. And that's honestly most of the world. Even in Montreal, you've been able to have wine and beer in parks forever, right? As long as you're consuming food, you can have it. And everybody's chill. Like go to the plateau in Montreal. Not today. It's pretty cold today. Well, actually, I don't know what it is in Montreal. But go in the spring, and you'll see families. You'll see everybody. And you go to most countries around the world, even peer countries like Australia, right? We're because we had prohibition, we still have leftovers of prohibition. So that's kind of how it is. I agree with you. I think we're going to normalize a lot of that, or at least get away from the unspoken rules of it all. You've always been able to drink in parks as long as you're chill, right?
Yeah.
But this way, it'll at least it won't require discretion, and it won't require, you doing this. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's some festivals in town that, I won't name. I think we can figure it out that, the bag checking policy was pretty ridiculous on purpose.
Yep.
Because they knew people would be bringing stuff in, and they wanted to not encourage that, but not discourage that. So so you do this farce of, checking bags.
Oh yeah, everything's good here.
Oh, definitely not going to open up that. And like I've been pulled over by the cops in my whitewater raft on a river because people had beers, and it's just okay. I'm sure we can get up to lots of trouble in a unmotorized craft on a river. Oh, we're nowhere near anybody. Yeah. Definitely, that's a harm to society that you need to get your police boat after us.
Yeah, there's a lot more pressing issues that those resources could be pointed towards right now. Yeah. We talk about the growth of craft beer. It's not going away anytime soon. I've been trying to use the word local beer or independent beer a lot more because macro breweries obviously keep buying craft breweries. But the segment is growing. I know overall beer consumption, actually haven't seen the results for 2020. So maybe it's changed with a worldwide pandemic, but the craft beer industry, the craft sector continues to grow, which is great. Within local beer, what do you think is poised for growth for 2021? We'll see more of, maybe what we'll see less of. Any ideas to trends or anything like that? Or do you want me to kick off with some of mine?
I want you to tell me what you think the trends are, and then I'll tell you why they're just out to lunch. Okay,
I like this. Yes, thank you. You can, Gary Vaynerchuk has a neat little segment called Overrated or Underrated. And like he's presenting things to him, and he says, underrated, and here's why, or overrated, played out, whatever.
Chuck Klosterman used to do that for Spin Magazine back in the day with bands. He'd be like, overrated, underrated, and perfectly rated. And the one I remember the most, this is a complete tangent, was the Beatles. So are the Beatles overrated, underrated, or properly rated? Chuck goes, okay, so the Beatles are widely seen as being the greatest band in history because they, were the greatest musicians and the greatest songwriters. Since all of that is true, they're properly rated. But you're right, totally. Underrated, overrated is a fantastic little game to play because it makes you think about things.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll go in that direction. Seltzers. Hard seltzers.
Definitely, they're going to be huge.
Yeah, I think they're still... here's actually what I think. It's two sides. I think in Alberta, they're underrated because there's still so much more potential for them. People want something easy drinking, low calorie. But I also think like the bigger brands, like, the dominant brand, I can say it, the White Claws. I think those are terribly overrated because there's nothing to them. Like, I think there's a balance we can find that you can have something that's easy to drink and refreshing, but also locally made, but also has some flavor on it, or some tasty flavor on it, if you will.
Yeah, I agree with you. Some of the macro examples are just Miller Clear and with some extract. You're too young for half of my references, Andrew. You don't know what Spin Magazine is. You've never heard of Miller Clear before.
I do many research, and I'm not as young as my gorgeous face would imply.
That's true. You aren't.
I just shaved today too, so I probably
exactly
here as well, right? It's beer related. It's really not, but RTDs, because you guys have played with a little bit of RTDs, no?
Just with a distillery next door to us that's now defunct. They wanted to do something, so we worked with them. That's there's lots of room for RTDs. There's some people doing some cool stuff. I don't know. I wouldn't say not in our market. That seems something, but look to the Japanese. The Japanese have got some real cool stuff that they got going on with their RTDs. Tiny little cans. High quality whiskey bases, and they do some fun stuff. That's where I would see some cool stuff happening, but probably not the game that we're going to play.
Yeah, fair enough. I just think it's neat that there's some crossover, right? Is that if people start to drink, or they've been drinking local beers, when they explore cocktails and distilleries, typically, not always, because the markets aren't fully there yet. But typically they'll look to more local options as well, right? If you support local restaurants and businesses, there's kind of a carryover, I think. Barrel-aged programs.
Are you asking me if they're overrated? No.
Yes.
We love barrels. We love wood. We got so many. We had a beer that's been in barrels for years. Like half a decade at this point. We got some beer kicking around, right? Like we personally love it. Hey, if there's people starting up breweries today and they don't want to put a barrel in their brewery because it takes up space and you don't make any money off of it. Yeah, you don't make any money off of it, but man, it's fun to play around with.
It's always cool. I still remember when Blindman for a while, you guys actually had a barrel in the wall and you would pull a nail and pour out of the barrel for people, right?
Yeah, that was we like to do things just because people tell us it can't be done. Like that's the only reason we sold some beer into Ontario to the LCBOs, because everybody's like, no, you can't sell to them. They'll never. And so you just do it. And so same with that one. The hardest part of that was getting the regulators on board. And it wasn't the AGLC. It was the Alberta Beverage Recycling Container Commission, because you have to approve every container. And we had to tell them that, nope, we will not be recycling this barrel after we're done with it. You don't have to worry about making sure that, your system can handle somebody bringing in a barrel and recycling it for 10 cents.
Yeah, right. Actually, don't you get 25 cents on volume?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, you're right.
Oh my God. That's hilarious. And actually not just barrel programs, to talk about more, kind of related, like more, spontaneous. You've had your cool ship in operation for 2-3 years now.
Yeah, I think we're going on 3.5 now. We haven't released any of the beer. It's just hanging out in puncheons. We've got a bunch of different seasons. We missed one due to COVID. We didn't really have the capacity to do that. Plus, one of the most important things about having a cool ship is when you make lambic, and any Belgian brewers, they're gonna get mad at me for using that word. When you make lambic, you have to drink lambic. So it's just another excuse to get together and drink beer together and watch a cool ship fill up. Yeah. But yeah, we got all that stuff, and we'll release it one day when it's awesome.
Yeah, of course. And for those who don't know, because some people might not know, in a nutshell, a cool ship basically, it's like a oversized baking tray. It's wide and shallow. You pump your wort into it, and rather than pitching yeast, it's random yeast in the air, essentially, that's going to inoculate and ferment your beer, right?
Yeah, humans have been turning things into alcohol for, tens of thousands of years. As soon as we, most of us developed the gene that would allow us to not be poisoned by it, we started to make it for various reasons that we don't have to go into here. So it's not exactly rocket science. Repeatability is an issue when you make lambics. So again, I'm going to get in trouble for saying that word, but yeah. So yeah, we've had some that didn't take for sure. We did a project with Alberta Innovates where we analyzed it, and there's a professor down at Indiana University, Dr. Bach, who's kind of the lead voice on, mixed fermentation, spontaneous fermentation from craft breweries. And so he's got a lab where they, PCR analysis. So we got a workup of every little, organism that played a role in this fermentation. And, a couple of times we had some weird stuff that, you didn't even think you'd be capturing, and, might want to dump that one, but, then you get some cooler stuff, and yeah, just wild, literally wild,
untamed. And then low calorie beers. What are your thoughts on low calorie beers?
Yeah, sure. I heard that Miller Lite only has one extra calorie than Michelob. That's what Miller's new marketing campaign is. It's proudly one more calorie. I don't know, whatever.
I don't follow calories and track them or any means, but I was curious. I was like, these low calorie ones, like, what are they advertising? And some of them around like 100 cal mark. And I was like, I need perspective. Like, what's an IPA? Is it like 150? Is it 200? And then you start looking at some of the big beers have like high alcohol content and how many calories can be in it. And you're like, okay, yeah, that's like a McDonald's cheeseburger, all right, or a Big Mac, depending
on if you're sharing a glass, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it for any drinkers, like I'm assuming most people here, the ethanol is the key, really, right? The vodka soda is still, it's the vodka. You can't really get around that chemical compound. You really can't get around that. So yeah, if a higher alcohol content, you're going to get more caloric content for sure.
Yep. Classic styles of beer. You guys have played with a lot of different beer. I was predicting last year that we'd see more and more a rise or a resurgence, if you will, of the West Coast style of IPA, moving away from the haze, moving a little more towards balance of malt and hop and maybe some clarity in IPAs. We started seeing more and more breweries releasing the West Coast, which is great. And then I think the next big thing might be more classic style. Because if someone got into beer through maybe a fruited beer or maybe a lager that was mimicking something they used to drink, or something completely different like a hazy that was very approachable, no bitterness, I think as people explore styles that they'll want to get into more classic styles, like more Hefeweizens, basically any style of German beers. And I think eventually we'll get into more English ales and pub ales and bitters. I think bitters need to be, I don't know, there's a stigma there that people are still scared of the word bitter, even though they drink a big IPA that could be bitter, right?
Yeah, I think there's room for a lot in the world. And, you know, even just taking, you know, if you take traditional styles but then serving them traditionally, you know, what I wouldn't give to see some, you know, bearded craft dude just take a big hammer to fire in a spigot like you can get in some of these traditional breweries in Germany, or, you know, there's a brewery in Seattle where every single beer they make is cask conditioned, and they got, you know, just a row of beer engines, and everything they make is cask conditioned, and just, yeah, I love that stuff.
Incredible. And I think as those things grow, we're starting to see, like, I think we'll start to see more themed breweries. Like, obviously we have Far, which is traditional German styles on their own. But we had Two Pillars that opened last year, which is all Belgian style of beers. I don't know how big the market is for all these different niches and things, but I think if you can create a unique experience for people, there's always going to be room for, like, the micro niche.
Hey man, if you execute, you can win. Whatever your you know, whatever path you're on, as long as you walk it, you'll do well. So hey, you know, if you make great Czechoslovakian beers or whatever, as long as you kill it, people will be the path to your door, I'm sure.
It's funny you bring that up. I was learning about Czech lagers the other day, and there's a very confusing, like, different dozen styles of very Czech specific lagers that you really won't find outside of the Czech Republic. So maybe one day we'll see more of those here.
I'll tell you a secret. Our Pilsner uses a Danish lager yeast.
Oh, now before you had your Five of Diamonds, you put out a Danish lager, didn't you?
Yes. Wouldn't you know? We liked it so much. It was a collab we did with Four Winds out of BC, and it tasted good. And we're like, man, this yeast is all right. It's slow AF. It's an 8-week beer. We don't, we're not putting out a 10-day lager like, you know, you would have seen, but hey, it performs, man.
Hells yeah. No, I love that. That's great. So time is flying. Last big question for you, my friend.
Get it.
And it's a big question, but I like it. So what we missed out on, what are some of the things you missed out on last year? And what are some of the things that you're looking forward to this year, once again? Assuming that, you know, we can get back to a life that we had before.
I don't know, touching other humans. Yep. I'm a big, you know, handshake and grabbing shoulders and smacking people on the back and generally making an ass of myself. So it'd be fun to get back into that. And then obviously, you know, touching other humans or being surrounded by other humans in large groups. Man, there's a lot of live music and festivals that I'm really looking forward to, man. It's gonna be, or even dance floors, man. Like it's gonna be a wild time.
Do you think we're heading on that path of replicating what happened in the Roaring 20s, as in, like, you know, you go through World War I and then there's a pandemic, and then people, you know, there was prosperity, there was industrial growth, there was a raise of wages, there was abundance of money. Basically, people were like, fuck it, let's party. And that's where the Roaring 20s, you know, really came to be. Do you think all this, like, pent-upness will explode onto the scene?
In a way. I don't know if like the opulence of the 20s will be replicated, but I definitely think people are gonna get real weird with it. You know, people have been you know, getting cooped up and have been thinking about things and thinking about their lives and how they want to live and who they are, and they're just gonna let it fly, man. And I think our world's gonna be the better for it, whether it's music, art, culture, just hanging out with each other, just people being true to themselves. It's gonna be exciting times.
Hells yeah. I know. Now, people traveling places, doing things. Were you on our beer bus when we did our beer bus down to Red Deer and back?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. We had, for those who don't know, we basically packed, what do we have, 22 people, and like 10 of them were brewers, and another like half dozen were like beer sales reps and just friends and spouses. And we left Edmonton, we went down to Red Deer, and we came back again, but we stopped at different breweries along the way and on the way back. And I am so pumped to do that again. I want to do like Edmonton style ones like that. I'd love to do ones in Calgary that way too. No, I don't want to start a tour company. I have no interest in that, but I want to do it for my own selfishness to be able to visit a bunch of breweries and have a pint and not worry about Ubering or getting a ride and this and that in between, and then doing it with a bunch of fun ass people, you know, at a time where it might be slower in the day, on a Saturday afternoon, whatever. We actually had a lot of a beer history tour in works. Now, were you part of the one with Jason Foster a number of years ago?
No, Shane was, but I wasn't. Me and you have talked about this before, but yeah, no, there's a lot of history in beer, even in our own backyards. It's been an industry that's always attracted, you know, the characters, the dreamers, the you know, misfits, people with wanton disregard for law.
Yeah,
there's some fun stuff there.
Yeah. So yeah, we were even chatting. I had some contacts, and I'm going to reach out to them again now because I'd love to get something, even if the dates aren't exact, at least it's somewhat pre-packaged. So when it's timed and you're allowed to do these things, and you can deploy it versus, you know, writing the script or planning out the places or whatever. But yeah, to have like a Jason Foster, to have an Edmonton, someone from the Edmonton Historical Society on board. You visit an old site, you tell the stories, you paint the picture, and then you go to a new brewery, and then you learn about them and have a pint, right? Travel in between. I think that would be absolutely wonderful. Speaking of Shane, and obviously you've been huge with the Edmonton Beer Geeks Anonymous in the past and with the ale festivals. Don't you just miss walking into an outdoor arena and just drinking 40 different beer on a lovely Saturday afternoon?
Oh, for sure. It's literally my favorite day of the year.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to do that this year. Life sucks.
Now, good news. We did have, it wasn't even a year ago yet, in, what was it, mid to late February, we had Freeze Your Cask Off.
It was my last big event before the lockdown for sure. Yeah, it was late February, early March. The Provincial Archives were playing their show at Sue's shop down the road that I went to after, and yeah, man, great event.
It's funny, just the well, I remember standing around with, you know, 5, 6, like the place is packed, right? You're shoulder to shoulder waiting, getting beers. And then because there's so many different beers, a lot of them were high ABV, they were 10% or above, that we'd share beers with each other. And like, just fathom it right now, you like, it's just like repulsive. But at the time you'd be like, oh man, have you tried this one yet? And the glass would be like passed around all the lips of people in the corner. And anyway, we were trying to try everything. So
yeah, I think we've all really underestimated how often we cough directly into each other's mouths. Definitely. I think that this pandemic has really put that number into focus. Like, it was probably all, you know, every time I go to the room, I was probably coughing into people's mouths and getting people to cough right directly into my mouth too.
Yeah, it's a good change. No more coughing in each other's mouths. And then a few other things. You were a Beer Mile champion on our first run of Beer Mile. I'm very excited to do a Beer Mile again once it's allowed. Just bring awesome people together, be an idiot for an afternoon, and then raise money for charity.
Yeah, just I don't know if I can bring my daughter this time. It feels like child abuse. When she was in a stroller, okay. We
what
did
if
well.
She pushes you in the stroller?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
There's something around that. And then beer day, I said cask events, launch parties. I know you guys would do a big birthday bash every year.
Yeah, we still did it this year. Just like super, super intimate. It was a rad time. You know, the people that, because obviously we had a space everywhere, well out, super small groups, super spaced out, which meant that we were able to provide literally personalized service. Like, you know, anyways, it was a great time, and people really digged it. They got the kind of access that, you know, you just don't get in a big event.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. Again,
silver lining, right? You just find, oh, I can only have, 10% of the people normally. Great. They're going to have the best time of their life.
Yeah. Like, obviously we didn't make any money on the event, but we had fun. So what the hell?
And you're like, I always look at it through the experience, right? You build your brand every time someone has an amazing time with a certain brand or company or tour or whatever it may be. Whew. Time flies by, my friend. That's 45 minutes already. God damn.
Look at that.
Anything else you'd like to let the beer drinkers of the province know or think about?
Hey, just thanks for supporting us through this whole thing, and hopefully we're all getting through this as best we can, and looking out the other side, looking. It's not that far away.
Yeah. The future is bright, man. I agree with you on that. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We will see you once again. Cheers.
Cheers, buddy.